success. We were growing, but man, did it take a toll on me and the leadership team.
All leaders crave clarity.
Success loves discipline. If it's human, it's mentionable. If it's mentionable, it's manageable. It's us versus the problem. It's not the problem between you and I. We can fight like cats and dogs over an issue and walk out of the room still friends. Life is not good when work is not good. So you run a better business, live a better life.
Entrepreneurial operating system changed everything. His company's profit soared from 6% to 34%. There's simple tools, brutal clarity, and relentless results. Ready to own your vision and freedom? This is Will. Will, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Hey, Jason, so great to be with you today.
Perfect. Will, I want to go through your EOS system. We see people and they'll go to a conference and they get this kind of what we call inspiration or motivation. And I know for you, you had a health scare. It was during 173% growth and you had a wake-up call. Can you pinpoint the difference between like your EOS and operating system or compared to that somebody uses and then motivation fades?
For sure. So yeah, it all got very real when I had some very alarming symptoms show up in my body because of stress. Went to the hospital, spent a day there doing all this stuff. And ultimately it came down to stress. We were growing, but man, did it take a toll on me and the leadership team. And that was the huge wake-up call. And I just set out on a mission to create a healthier business, healthier life, and came across the book Traction, read it, hired an EOS implementer, and it was a game changer for us, like for so many other companies, where we continued to grow. As you said, net profit went from 6% to 34%. And it went from like, it felt like herding cats every day. I love that analogy because that's so chaotic and what it felt like, to functioning as a high performance team. And I just fell in love with the whole process. It created a lot of freedom for me as the owner. I wound up able to hand that company over. I have a wonderful team that runs it. And I just do EOS implementation now for other companies. But the thing that's scary about that was there wasn't like one single stressful situation that pushed me over the edge that I was aware of. It was this cumulative effect that you don't even realize, like the body is experiencing all of this stuff, right? Our physical body and our mind, our soul, there's like this buffer and this delay, and all of this stuff was just building up. So it's one situation after another, being not on the same page with the other leaders, having another client situation pop up, another fire to put out, another stress ball. And it just keeps piling on. And when it snaps, man, you don't always see it coming, right? It's just out of nowhere. It's like, whoa. And so as far as that event, I can't say that, oh yeah, this client situation did it. It was this scary, silent, but deadly accumulation of stress that happened over time. And so obviously when we started using EOS ourselves, there's a lot of wonderful, really practical tools in there. But one of the big ones is something we call the accountability chart, which makes it crystal clear who is supposed to. First of all, you kind of take a big step back and you create the right structure for the organization. Like, what is the right structure as far as functions, roles, accountabilities? But you get crystal clear on who is supposed to be doing what exactly. What are their main accountabilities in the organization? And just getting clarity on that alone, you'd think that's obvious. But man, even in a growing company, complexity just pours on. You add another person, complexity is just so inherent in that process. And it's not just, it's communication, it's culture, it's processes and systems. It all just keeps becoming more and more complex. So to take a step back, say, wait a second, okay, who is actually supposed to be doing what? What are the workflows? And we had been working on that to some degree, but without success. As an entrepreneur, what we're so good at is figuring it out, man. We just jump in and ask questions later. And so what happens is you start kind of this patchwork of systems and processes, and we're going to use this tool to solve that problem and that tool to solve this problem. And you wind up with this kind of Frankenstein of a business system with all different kinds of operating systems going on. So it's kind of going on and on here, but I'll go back to the accountability chart, getting crystal clear on roles and accountabilities and what's our plan moving forward. Because when you get the accountability chart right, you see the pain that you feel. Like you're looking at this visual diagram and you're going, okay, that's why this hurts so much. And so that tool in particular, and I'll just say one last thing and then I'll shut up, Jason. Sorry. I get passionate about this stuff, as you can tell.
No, this is great. This is awesome, Will.
the big part of the accountability chart is identifying a couple of critical roles on the leadership team called the visionary and the integrator. And the visionaries was love to stay at 30,000 feet, creative problem solving, come to meetings with 20 ideas, great at coming up with ideas that I need other people to execute on because I just don't have what it takes to push it over the finish line. I don't have that drive and that day-to-day discipline to follow every detail through, to completion. And the integrator is that person. That's the one who beats the daily drum of the organization. They hold everyone accountable. They have tough conversations. They dig into the weeds and make things happen. And that was sucking the life out of me. I was unaware that I was trying to fulfill two very distinctly different functions in an organization. Both are critical. But when we got clarity on that, man, and I brought in another gentleman who now runs the company to be the integrator, and I was a visionary, and we were both on the same page. Man, that was just a huge talk about relieving stress. That was a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, we have a lot of tech leaders listening to this podcast, and a lot of them play that CEO, COO role. Whenever you look at, because I know in your system, this is what I loved about it, and it's super appealing. And I'm going to use a word that leaders are going to be drawn to. The EOS system, it kind of makes me like crave clarity. And all leaders crave clarity. And EOS has a simplistic, and I don't want people to think simplicity because like Steve Jobs, when he wanted when you open the iPhone it to be beautiful inside and simple. He had his design teams work on that. When you design this EOS, building the company, simplicity drives profound change. We know that. What's this deepest psychological shift you see in leaders when they begin to embrace your tools? Like what happens? I know clarity is a big one, but can you kind of go into maybe even with yourself when you begin to see this and understand it psychologically, what began to happen to you?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Well, I'll say the biggest one is, as you said, clarity brings. Well, I like to say clarity brings action because complexity and confusion are like the biggest enemies of
Mhm.
action. But when things are crystal clear, it's obvious what you should be doing. And so you have the clarity, but here's the other thing that happens is discipline.
Mm,
And that discipline, someone I know, they say success loves discipline. And part of the big part of the EOS process is this weekly discipline. There is just this cadence, this rhythm of accountability driven discipline. So what I'm getting to is when you're every week looking in the eyeballs of your leadership team and you're asking, is the scorecard on track? Is that number
mm,
on track or off track? Your number, is it on track or off track this week? And you're going through what we call rocks, which are just 90-day priorities. Every week, you're looking in the leadership team's eyes and say, is this rock on track or off track? That cadence of accountability, weekly accountability, is what drives the discipline because you're going to be there on Monday or Wednesday or whenever your weekly meeting is, giving an update on this project. And so I think it's a combination of clarity and rigorous discipline. And that discipline for a lot of people comes from accountability, from
mm.
having a team who is a high performing team. You're trying to get somewhere, but we're human, right? We're not perfect. We need that accountability to drive this whole thing forward. And what EOS does is it inherently instills discipline and accountability throughout the organization.
Yeah, and that those two things are what everyone's craving. I want us to get into not just a scorecard, but level 10 meetings. Why does this, and I know the scorecard and level 10 meetings together kind of unlocks the structure for the team's potential. But whenever you look at a level 10 meeting, because so many people, we've all gone to bad meetings. What is the scorecard and level 10 meetings coming together? If you don't mind talking about it.
Sure. So we call it the level 10 meeting because, like, just yesterday, I met with a great company, a big company, a lot of employees, and I asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best, rate your meetings, your internal team meetings. And the average was three. They're
Mhm.
in the three. And so, Patrick Lencioni wrote a great book called Death by Meetings. It's a wonderful book. But most meetings are a killer waste of time and super frustrating. And so we call them a level 10 meeting because it's a tool, it's a specific agenda that tens of thousands of companies all over the world use every single week. It's a proven agenda and it elevates the quality of your meetings from that level 3 or 4 on average is what I find companies are saying to a level
Right.
10. And the way that it does that, it's very prescriptive. It is a 90-minute meeting. This is a leadership team meeting on a weekly basis, and there's a specific agenda. A couple of things, and the thing I love about it, I won't go deeply into it. You can look it up, but it spends 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting on reporting. 15 minutes only. So reviewing the scorecard, we've got 10 to 15 high level numbers that give us an absolute pulse on the company. We review those numbers every single week, run through the list of 10 to 15 high level numbers for the leadership team. The next thing, as I said, we review our rocks, 5 minutes tops. And then we review customer or client and employee headlines. Just need to know wins, maybe some concerning situations, things that we need to drop down to the issues list. It's another element of that. A big, important, most important part of the agenda is the IDS, we call it identify, discuss, and solve. It's a specific way to solve issues at the root, make them go away forever. But my point is the first 15 minutes, we crush through what really matters. What does the leadership team need to have their eyeballs on every single week? It's driving accountability. It's driving awareness. Knowledge is going up and down the organization. And that gets done and out of the way. And now we're not spending 30 minutes reviewing some report, going into the weeds, hit the essential information. Then we move on to some weekly to dos. And then the big part of the agenda is, as I said, solving issues at the root. And so you asked, how does a level 10 meeting and the scorecard kind of play together? Well, the scorecard is an element, an essential element of that level 10 weekly leadership team meeting.
So I know you boosted your company's profits from 6 to 34% by mastering EOS. I want to step back so leaders kind of understand and talk about the six key components. And then from there we'll get into it, how it shaped you as a leader in your identity. But can you kind of go over in a macro sense the six key components?
Yeah, I'll give it to you in a nutshell. So, six key components. It's based on the discovery that all entrepreneurial leaders tend to struggle with 136 issues simultaneously. But to the degree that you can strengthen the six key components of your business, those 136 issues just tend to fall into place because they're actually symptoms of a real root cause rooted in one of those six key areas. So the six key areas are: number one, the vision component. That's getting everyone in the company crystal clear and aligned and on the same page with where are we going and how do we all plan to get there. Second key component is the people component. You can't accomplish a great vision without great people. But the truth is that every company defines great people differently. Some people call them A players, superstars, top quartile. We cut through all that and we define what is a great person for your unique company. The third area is the data component, and that's running the big business on facts and figures, on hard, objective information rather than emotions, egos, subjective feelings, all of the things that tend to drive decision making in an entrepreneurial company. The fourth key component is the issues component. And that's just getting really good at solving problems as they arise. Your team has to be really good at setting them up, knocking them down, making them go away for good on a consistent basis because stuff's always coming across your plate, stuff you got to fix. The fifth key component is the process component. That's making sure that we get all of the important stuff in the business done the right and best way every single time. That's what creates scalability, creates profitability, makes the business a lot more fun to run and manage when everything is being done the right and best way every time. And then the last component is the traction component. That's bringing the vision down to the ground and executing on it day in and day out. So those are the six key areas: vision, people, data, issues, process, and traction.
Yeah, I love that. How did it reshape you and your identity as a leader? And I know, you talk about from firefighter to architect, but what did that look like when you began to see EOS working in your own life?
Oh my gosh. So, Jason, we all have giftings and abilities, talents, just we're genetically encoded. We have DNA that there's work that fills our cup. There is work that energizes us. We could just do it all day long.
Mhm.
And then there's other work that sucks the life out of us. There is work that you can do it. You might even be really good at it, but you can't stand doing it. And sadly, too much of the working force, too many of us are doing a whole lot of work that we might be good at that is just sucking the life out of us. So the biggest transformation, I'll say, the biggest aha, the biggest impact on my life was me being able to get in my lane and do work that I actually enjoyed and was good at. I loved to do it and I was good at doing it. And I could spend most of my day doing that kind of work versus all of the other stuff that I needed to delegate and elevate away from. And so that, I don't know if there's anything more important in life than doing something you love and are actually good at. Man, you could go on and on about that, but for me, that was most impactful.
Yeah, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs, especially, like tech startup entrepreneurs, they're, juggling all these plates. What do you say to somebody that seems like they're slipping all the time, they can't execute? And I want to talk specifically about gaining traction and what that looks like with ruthless focus on rocks. Could you mention rocks several times? So let's go into rocks a little bit.
Sure, Stephen Covey, YouTube it. Great analogy. It's a visual illustration, but rocks for us are just 90-day priorities. So every quarter as a company, we set our 3 to 7 most important priorities for the quarter because less is more. 3 to 7, not 27. If everything is important, nothing is important. And the skill of a great leader is a skill to prioritize. It's to understand what is most important, to predict, to look at the landscape, look at where we're going and predict, okay, this we got to solve next. And then this we got to solve next. So the ability to prioritize is very important as a leader. And so we set every quarter 3 to 7 company rocks stuff. I like to say, if we don't get this done, the wheels are going to fall off. Like the house is burning down. We can grab 3 to 7 things before we head out the door. What are we going to grab? That's the mindset. And so we put everything out on the board. I have the leadership team. We make a giant list. Sometimes there's 30, 40 things on, everyone just throws stuff. Oh, we got to do this. We get all that stuff on the board, on the whiteboard. And then we work together. We discuss, debate, and decide and get it down to the 3 to 7. And I always try to get them to 3 if I can. If it's got to be 7, fine, but less is more. I get them down to 3 to 7 things. And then you leave the meeting with everyone crystal clear and on the same page is what are our true priorities? What do we need to go execute on with discipline and focus and accountability? And every week in that level 10 meeting, we're giving an update. Are we on track? Are we going to get this done? And so that's what rocks are. Ultimately, we get a 3 to 7 company rocks, and then each leader will set 3 to 7 individual rocks, we call them. And so these are just maybe less important to the company. They intuitively understand, yeah, we got to get this. I need to get this done in my department, so I'm going to make it an individual rock. And that creates a lot of clarity as to what we should really be putting the most of our time and energy and effort on to improve the quality of the business in the next 90 days.
A lot of our audience is tech leaders because a lot of times how founders will do it is they go up on the mountain, they get the tablets, they bring it back down. And here it is, people, where you're talking about getting everyone in kind of more of a decentralized leadership format. And then in that format, what you're talking about is them all taking ownership of it. What does that look like? How does it keep these 90-day goals? How does it keep discipline?
That is such a great point, Jason. And that's a huge part of working with a leadership team, not just the visionary, let's say, or the leader coming down, like you said, and telling everybody. I call that rock throwing, not rock setting. We set rocks, we don't throw rocks. And so when you have a collaborative environment where we can discuss, debate, and decide, you as a leader need to have those other perspectives. There's a reason they're on the leadership team. They've got a perspective that's valuable. And very often, whether it's gusto or the bravado of the leader, they tend to say, we're going to go do this.
Mhm.
But when accountability, we talked about the accountability chart, when it's really clear who is supposed to be doing what, and the visionary leader says, "Hey, we're going to do 50 million this quarter," and the sales guy over here is going, oh, "I know we can get to 30, but 50 is just no chance." And now we have a meaningful discussion and a debate, and we decide as a team. And you're right, Patrick Lencioni, once again, the 5 dysfunctions of teams. He talks about vulnerability-based trust at the bottom of the pyramid. I don't know if you're familiar with this work,
Okay.
but the point is when people need to feel heard in order to buy in and to commit to a decision. If you make a decision and they have not had the chance to be heard and to weigh in and to participate, you're going to have a really tough time having those people take ownership of that decision. Even if they disagree with it, but they get to be heard. So we have a rich, meaty, maybe difficult discussion, and maybe one or two people say, I don't think that's the right thing. A reasonable leader, if they have been heard, can commit to the outcome even if they don't necessarily agree with it. And so getting everyone having a voice and getting heard, and then the fearless leader makes the call and said, okay, team, here's what we're going to do. Because it's not a democracy here. We're not going to take votes. How many people think we should do this? How many people? There's a leader for a reason. And so the leader hears everybody's perspective, make sure everyone has been heard. And now, okay, team, This is what we're going to commit to doing. And then that team goes with a single united front, no cracks in the armor. There's no cracks in our teamness. So you don't have some leader going out and saying, hey, yeah, I didn't think we should do it, but here's what we're going to do anyway. No, they go out and they say, all right, everybody, this is what we're doing. We're united front as a team, one voice, one team. And that can only happen when you have some discussion, debate, and you get to let people be heard.
I love that. And speaking of that, there's always this universal fear in a leader about conflict or diving into conflict. I know the IDS process forces teams to face uncomfortable truths. I have a couple questions on IDS, but let's start with explaining IDS to the audience.
Yeah, IDS just stands for identify, discuss, solve. These are three distinct phases of a discussion. What we found is that even great leadership teams will get into a room to tackle an issue and they'll discuss the heck out of the issue. Rarely will they identify the real root cause of the issue, and rarely will they work together to agree on a solution that will make that problem go away for good. And so IDS keeps them on track to actually solve issues one by one of a very specific process that we go through that. But identifying is the bulk of the work, because whatever is written down or whatever someone says is the issue is most of the time a symptom. And you've got to dig down into the organization to understand, okay, how could this have even happened in the first place? And what you'll uncover is there's usually several contributing factors, sub issues, you might call them, that are creating this scenario, and you've got to dig down and understand at the root of it what's going on, because someone might show up and say we need to let so and so go, and you dig down into it and you go, it was actually the HR manual's not been updated in 4 years, and that's the root issue that presented as someone actually needing to get let go. And you're okay, wait, okay, so maybe we shouldn't let them go, maybe we need to fix this, have a conversation. So IDS helps you get to the root of the problem. You then briefly discuss the issue with nobody repeating themselves. We say it once and only once, because more than once is politicking. So once the conversation gets redundant, we move to the solve phase, and that's where we make a decision. Someone commits to an action that will make that problem go away for good. So it's a very sequential, very specific way to work through issues one by one to solve them at the root.
And I love that. And one of the things I noticed with the system is, instead of the problem becoming personal and a name being tagged to the problem becomes a highlight of the EOS. And so now the team can look at it without, like you said, looking at the HR manager and saying it's her fault or his fault. And so now when you highlight it like that and it's not personal, then it allows a safe space to resolve it. Why do you think this approach, especially when it comes to mistrust or avoidance, and maybe you have an example, why do you think EOS creates such a great safe space?
So one thing from the beginning, every session we talk about is open and honest. And it's one of the biggest transformations that you'll find on a leadership team when people experience vulnerability-based trust. So open and honest, I tell them, open means listen to one another. Let your guard down. Just be open, be open-minded, really hear what each other is saying. And then honest means just say it. Get it out on the table. Don't hold back. A great team working together can solve it all. So don't be strategic. Don't try to say it just get it out there and then work together to solve it. Because I like to say, if it's human, it's mentionable. If it's mentionable, it's manageable. Meaning that this is all the human experience. Nobody's perfect. Let's just get it on the table. It's us versus the problem. It's not the problem between you and I. It's you and I on the same side of the table, and the problem's over there. So all of that happens from vulnerability-based trust, and that it comes through team building. That comes from spending time together outside of the office, sometimes doing social events, really getting to know each other's story, know where they come, what was their childhood like, what was their greatest challenge in childhood. I mean, when people start opening up about who they really are, it's easy to connect with people. We all have such fascinating stories. And when you see people for who they really are, and you understand they're not trying to be a threat to you, they're not trying to attack you, they have a good intent. They have a good motive in mind for why they're saying what they're saying. And when you can see that and trust that, then the conversations and these discussions go to a whole new level, because we can fight like cats and dogs over an issue and walk out of the room still friends. We're passionately arguing for a position or for an idea versus arguing against trying to tear someone else down.
Yeah, I love that. And EOS calls itself a people operating system. How does aligning everyone to core values, and you have the people analyzer for that, how does it go beyond HR to kind of unleash a team's collective energy towards the vision? So can you kind of go into a little bit about the people analyzer and how collectively we can move and operate in the vision?
Yeah, the People Analyzer is a wonderful tool that does a great job helping you to assess your people, and it assesses them in a couple of ways. One is against core values. So, how consistently are they exemplifying the core values of the company? So, we go through a whole discovery exercise to define those, get clear. Every company has a unique set of core values true to that team. They're not just these cookie cutter kind of permission to play general vague core values. They're specific. They're unique to your company. So we get those defined and the tool helps you kind of, I say measure, it's a thinking tool. This is not about legalistic number grading system against a core value. It's a thinking tool and a conversation tool that helps you have meaningful conversations with your employees as to where they're doing great, maybe where they're falling a little short and need to step up. So that's against core values. And the other way it evaluates your people is against something we call GWC, which is gets it, wants it, has the capacity for it. Gets it is that innate talent, their DNA, their genetic encoding to do the work well. They just get it. You show them something, they're like, oh yeah, they jump right in. Wants it is the passion, the drive, the inner desire to do the work. They get out of bed in the morning actually wanting to do this kind of work. And then the capacity for it means that they've got the skills, the training, the learned skills and training or experience to do the job well. So the people analyzer brings all that together. So when someone is consistently exhibiting your core values and they GWC that role or that seat in your accountability chart, man, you've got a great person. They're great at their job and they're great for the culture. We call that a right person in the right seat, which is popularized by Jim Collins in his book Good to Great. Right person, right seat. You got to have both. So that's what the accountability chart does. And it helps drive culture throughout the organization because this isn't just a tool that sits in a drawer somewhere. We have something called quarterly conversations, which is not an HR function. This is not a written up, documented, formal. This is you going out for coffee for an hour or two with your direct report and having a human to human conversation. You're their biggest proponent. Like you want them to succeed. And so you ask them, hey, how do you feel like you've been doing with the core values? And then you ask them, hey, how are your rocks this quarter? Are they going on track? Do you feel, hey, how are you with the 5 major roles of your function? Like this, in the accountability chart, we define the 5 major roles of your seat, what you got to own. How are you doing with that? How's everything going? You ask them how they're doing, and then you share your feedback, how you think they're doing, and you have a deep, meaningful conversation. This is what unlocks people. This is what creates a human connection and helps people feel like they matter to the company, that the company cares about them, and they therefore want to be more committed and more loyal and more bought into the company's vision and helping it be successful.
I love that. And one of the things is of course, we have people listening to this that are going to be skeptic, especially when it comes to long-term success, because many systems fizzle out after the honeymoon phase and they've gone almost schizophrenic because they've gone through all of these 2 or 3 a year. Where do companies usually stumble most in sustaining EOS? And what's the one factor that separates those that you believe who achieve lasting traction from those who don't?
So you got to be, it's like so many things in life. You got to be all in. You got to be committed to the process. I met with a team yesterday, good people, good company. They could be a great team. They could be a great company. But I told them this is a 2-year process. On average, that's about how long it takes to train. And then they graduate. Like this isn't an ongoing forever consulting gig. I teach them the stuff and then I get the heck out of the way, let them go run their business. When they get it, they graduate and they're done. And the ones who get through the process and who really experience the most benefit are the ones who are committed to the process. They're willing to get it's hard work. You're fundamentally changing how you run the business. Or not this sits below your area of expertise. So it doesn't matter if you're a law firm or an IT firm, manager, what this sits below all of that. It's how you run a business, and you've got to be committed to improving the quality of how you run the business. The ones who dabble, who kind of try it, and who don't stick with it, are the ones who really have wasted everyone's time and money.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the alternative? Hospital visits, divorce. I mean, start naming the alternative to you putting in 24 months to dramatically change. Because this is what I liked about it, what we started off with, and maybe you could talk to this a little bit more, is watching, and I know you guys have conferences and stuff like that, and we encourage everybody to go to the website that'll be below, but it's how it changes you as a leader. It's not just like, oh, I'm gonna put all these systems in place. I can be a little hands off. No, it's making you, like you said, it's making you not have to go to those stressed out hospital visits, the panic attacks. Talk to leaders all the time. They're experiencing these things. They're angry all the time. They can't help but blow up because people don't understand. I can't get people to figure it out. You talk to leaders all the time. These are the things. So what does it do if they commit to 24 months? What does it do to them and their team personally?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I the reason I do the work that I do is because of the net effect that it has on families, on the employees and their families. Because work consumes such an enormous part of our lives. It's the majority of our day, most days for most people. And when they're frustrated at work, I jokingly say they go home, kick the dog, yell at their kids. I mean, life is not good when work is not good.
Right.
And so the greatest impact that's most fulfilling for me is when I improve the health of the organization. And when I say health, I mean financial health, I mean team health, I mean the health of their ability to produce and deliver value to the marketplace. It has a profound effect on the entire community. Because, as we said earlier, when you're able to do work that is truly fulfilling and you feel like you're a part of a team who is a team, and you feel like you see a vision, you're all aligned with a place that's compelling. Like you want to get to this. We call it a 10-year target. We've aimed toward this big, hairy, audacious goal, as it's called, the BHAG. And we're making some progress toward that. That is an exciting, fulfilling place, and it affects the whole rest of your life. And so running a business on EOS, it orchestrates and harmonizes all the moving parts, helps you run a better business, live a better life. And that's been my own personal experience. And that's what I see for my clients time and time again.
Yeah, I know you talked about the visionary integrator and how you were able to hire somebody to do the integrator part where you're the visionary. And I think that's critical identifying that, because some people could be like in the tech world, we have a lot of integrators that they were great engineers. And then next thing you know, they're putting to a leadership position. What's the most common fracture you see in the partnership during this? Maybe they've adopted EOS and now they got these 24 months that they're working with, or during growth or a crisis. What do you see fracture when they've identified the visionary integrator?
So when we identify those two, we also create the 5 major roles for each seat.
Mm.
And getting those two to be on the same page with what each other is doing is huge. And so first of all, by getting really clear on who's doing what, because sometimes the visionary wants to do end runs, they want to go talk to some frontline and circumvent chain of command and dabble and cause a mess for the integrator. And so getting really clear on who's doing what, who's responsible for what. But then the other big piece of it is something we call same page meetings, or a same page meeting is where the integrator and the visionary get together at least once a month for like 2, 3, 4 hours. And you just have a session where you get on the same page. So you get all of the issues out on the board. We create an issues list, and we prior, just like IDSing in a weekly LT, the two of you get on the same page and you just crush through one issue after another, getting on the same page, addressing issues. And that communication is so important, because when a visionary is freed to be a visionary, it's easy for them to kind of lose touch with the problems and challenges and what's going on the ground with the integrator. And the integrator needs that support. They need that vision, that direction, that sounding board, that's encouragement, because their job's tough. They're the ones executing, bringing the business plan to reality every week. And so that communication and staying on the same page is that second critical piece.
One of the biggest issues I see when I talk to leaders, you've probably read the execution book, but I always hand that out to everyone. I have like 10 copies, because that's, for me as a leader, that was like, oh, I'm doing all these meetings, I'm doing all this, and there's no clarity. But on top of that, no one's really executing. They're going through all these processes that I set up, but no one is executing at a level. That's where my frustration was coming from, is there was no clarity, so no one was executing. And I know vision without traction is hallucination. What's the biggest delusion leaders cling to with these plans are the lack of execution? And can you talk a little bit about execution with EOS?
Yeah, EOS is essentially an execution system. We tell clients upfront, if we're assuming that you're in the right market and you're serving the right products and services into that market, because if you're not, we can't help. EOS is an execution system, and the entire system is designed to get you from point A to point B. And it helps you understand what point B is, by the way, like getting crystal clear on the same page with where it is it exactly that we're going. I'll refer back to the discipline of accountability. That is where execution is really, well, I'll bring in rocks as well. We said rocks are these 90-day priorities. In a quarter, EOS quarterly, we come to the table and we look back the last quarter to see how we did on the rocks. What was our rock completion percentage? So we measure that because it's a good metric to see how good the team is at predicting and executing on their rocks. And when rocks are not complete, among all of the words that I hear as to why they're not complete, all of those words fall into two buckets. Either they didn't set the rock well, or they didn't hold each other accountable. If they didn't set the rock well, maybe it was too big, it was a mongrel rock, it was just unachievable, it wasn't written smart, specific, measurable. Either it wasn't set well and now they're confused as to what really should have been done and whatever, or they didn't hold each other accountable as a team on a weekly basis. They're looking at each other saying on track, off track. And if something's off track, that's an issue. What's going on? Because when I say on track means I'm confident it's going to be done on time and I don't need any help right now. Off track means the opposite of that. So when we're going around and we're asking about rocks, we say is on track or off track. Off track means, hey, I need help right now, or I'm not confident it's going to be done by the end of the quarter. And if that conversation is happening, chances are the team is going to rally and do whatever's necessary to make sure that we help that person get it back on track. And so that's where the execution, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the traction happens, is in team accountability and support on a weekly basis, and or making sure you set the rock smart from the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. I know if it takes 24 months to take root, are there cultures or dysfunctions, things that you've seen where it has a struggle taking root because of these dysfunctions or because of a bad culture?
So, the underbelly of this thing is that the EOS process smokes out issues and gets them on the table. And what that means very often is that a leadership team, I would say most of the time, by the end of the 2-year process, the leadership team looks different than it did when we started. So what happens is people self-eject. If they're not bought into the vision, if they're actually not sharing the core values, it's going to push it to the crisis point where a change is going to happen. And those people are going to leave. And that might sound harsh or mean, but the reality is we want them to go be successful somewhere else. Like this just isn't your group. This isn't your tribe. Go find your tribe, because you're holding us back. If you're not bought into the vision and if you're not feeling the culture, then you're not a fit. We don't want you around. We want you to go find the place where you can thrive. So I say all that to say the dysfunction will be revealed and dealt with one way or another. Either people are going to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to commit, and they'll make the changes and they'll grow. We say change the people or change the people.
Yeah, yeah.
Change the people or change the people. So one way or another, it's going to come out. The teams that would struggle would be the ones where the issue comes out, but they don't have the courage. They're not willing to rip off the Band-Aid. They just want to keep kicking the can down the road and hoping that someday the problem will go away. But the brave ones who will rip off the Band-Aid, make the tough call, and do what's right for the greater good of the company are the ones who are going to succeed.
Yeah, I know you've coached over 200 owners. When it comes to ego and leadership, especially in the C-suite roles, what blind spots do you see? And then and maybe you could get into this a little bit too in the weeds on this, the EOS data component. How does it expose that? And what do you see in blind spots when we're looking at data?
I forget. I think it was a general who said this. I forget who it was, but I love this phrase. He would always tell his leadership team, tell me something I don't want to hear.
That's good. Yeah.
And what I found is that you can say that and it sounds nice and people like it, but they still won't tell you until like the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th time you say that to them. And now they're going, okay, he's actually serious about this. Here's this little thing I've been kind of holding on to that he should probably know about. And so I think leaders need to adopt that phrase, tell me something I don't want to hear. And what that does is kind of help you face the brutal facts, help you face the brutal reality of what's going on. And the data component also does that on a weekly basis with the scorecard. Information's pouring in. The scorecard is not just those numbers. It's 10 to 15 high level numbers that are weekly human based activities, meaning they're leading indicators versus lagging. It's not just about the financials from last month. What are the human actions that are supposed to be happening this week that will tell us if we're going to be on track to hit our monthly, quarterly, and annual goals? But coupled along with that information is a 13-week rolling calendar. So what we're doing is watching trends. That's what helps
Mhm.
you really get something, protect it from going off the rails and creating a train wreck, is when you can see something. Wait, we missed that number last week and the week before and the week before. It's like being at the hospital and someone's hooked up to a machine and the machine starts beeping. It's like, hey, if something doesn't happen here, bad things are in store. Let's do something about this. And that's what the scorecard does. So I think that's what helps owners and specifically maybe visionaries who are more big idea people. They love just kind of the connections and the spirit of entrepreneurship, but sometimes might shrink back from the harsh reality of the numbers, helps them face it and helps the team. This is what's so good about it, is when you have a leadership team who is looking at those numbers, it's not just falling all on the leader to be aware of a number and go, okay, how do I fix this number? It's the whole team taking ownership of all of the numbers. And as a collective group, they know more than you, no matter how financially savvy you are, for example. A whole team of leaders is going to have a better solution than just you sitting alone in your office trying to figure it out.
100%. That's so wise. From your own crisis to coaching others, what do you think, speaking of wisdom, what's the single most vital thing you've seen distilled about using EOS? And I know because the high idea is to achieve clarity, alignment, and freedom as a leader. What do you think that if you could distill it down to the single thing, what would you say?
As a system, I would say it's a single holistic system. I, for years, would patch together, I'd buy some software or some platform to solve an issue, and then another one here and another one there. And I had all these separate, disparate systems. And the biggest kind of peace generating deal to this for me was that it was a single holistic system that spoke to every critical area and brought them all together. And it did it at a fundamental business principle level. So it's industry agnostic. Doesn't matter what your area of expertise is. It spoke to the foundation of the business, and I deeply needed a holistic system that would speak to the foundation of the business system. So that was the biggest impact for me.
I love that. And, you know, two more questions. We're coming up on the hour. Will, this has been absolutely amazing. I know in 2025, with AI and economic shift shaking things up, which EOS principle or tool would you double down on, to keep leaders grounded during this tumultuous time and ready to seize the opportunities? I believe there's always opportunities when we have these shifts. And I heard Gary Vaynerchuk say something the other day: technology is undefeated. Everybody that goes against a new technology, whether it's the horse and buggy, and go on and go on and on, we can see there being issues. So what do you think we should double down on with these EOS principles?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the weekly meeting, that communication and accountability and problem solving issues, there'll always be issues. And the more often and more consistently you can come together as a team, meaningfully communicate, discuss, debate, and decide, take action, the variables will always be happening, but your team can always handle those if you're communicating and working together as a team. So I would say that the number one, the heartbeat of it, is that weekly level 10 meeting.
I love that. And I know EOS transformed your life and hundreds of businesses you guys are coaching. What's the one question you wish every leader, and we'll close out in this, what's the one question you wish every leader would ask themselves before starting EOS to ensure that they're ready to own the journey and then see it through for those 24 months?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say, am I willing to decide? Am I willing to decide? And that sounds maybe simplistic and superficial, but making a decision is a critical skill. And I think about the word decide, CIDE, side is, if you think of like the words genocide, suicide, pesticide, what does that mean to you, Jason, when you hear the word side? What does that mean?
I know it always seemed, I mean, the words seem negative, but obviously it's like is it like a ultimate decision?
Yeah, you're killing off all of the other options.
Mhm.
You're basically saying no to a lot of other things. And as entrepreneurs, we've got unlimited options. There's business leaders. There's 1,000 solutions, it seems like, to any problem. But am I willing to decide? Am I willing to kill off all of the other and just pick one? Make the decision. Am I willing to make a decision? And that's hard because you're saying no to a lot of things that could, you never know. Grass is always greener, all this stuff. Am I willing to decide? And so I would tell leaders before they consider this or any there's other systems besides EOS. Great. Whatever is right for you, am I willing to decide? Am I willing to commit, make a decision, say no to the other stuff and yes to the one thing to move my business forward?
That's so great. I want all the leaders that are listening to check your website out. What are some of the things when they go on the website that you offer, and what are some of the things that, because I know you have a ton of free stuff, people can go through the system and look at everything and get assessments. Can you kind of go into that a little bit, and then also the coaching and the conferences and stuff that you offer leaders?
Oh my goodness, there's so much going on in the EOS world. If you would Google it, yes, there's several conferences going on every year, trainings, workshops. The book Traction is a great start. Get the Audible version of Traction. Listen to it. A lot of leaders don't want to sit down with a book and read it, but listen to Traction. And there is an organizational checkup, we call it. It's like an assessment. It's like 20 questions. It just asks you to answer 20 questions about your company and on a scale of 1 to 5. It gives you really good insights of where you might be experiencing the most pain, kind of bring it to the surface. And then whatever that area is, there is a EOS tool. We call it the EOS toolbox that will address that specific area. You can dig into, learn a little bit more about it. But I would start with that organizational assessment or checkup, as we call it.
Yeah, I'll put that specific link in the show notes. Well, I want to thank you. This has been amazing, very tactile, very, I think, uplifting. And I encourage everybody to go to your website, check out the EOS system, look at everything that you have going on. But I appreciate you, appreciate your leadership, and appreciate your company and what you're doing and helping others.
Awesome. Likewise, Jason. Thank you for your leadership. And it's been a pleasure to be on with you today.